What's up, everybody? It's another great day to have a great day. Welcome back to Trip Ups and Triumphs, the podcast where we keep it real about setbacks, comebacks, and everything in between. Trip Ups and Triumphs is the podcast that keeps it real about the highs and lows of life. And boy, have I been covering a lot. If you're still with me, right? I'm your host, Nathan Cabrera, and we dive into raw conversations about failures, comebacks, and the lessons that turn setbacks into success. And whether you're grinding through a challenge or celebrating a win, this show is here to remind you that it's all a part of the journey. So here you'll expect real stories, unfiltered insights, and a few laughs along the way, because otherwise I'd go crazy sharing all this stuff with you and my guests and all that crap. Tune in and get inspired to turn your trip ups into triumphs. Welcome back, everyone. So if you made it this far, thank you so much. And if you're viewing me now, I'm wearing shorts because the weather is somewhat nicer and still getting used to the second camera here, but lo and behold, we've made it. So today, gonna be sharing a couple things with you guys. Gotta pull up my notes. We gotta talk about some things. And so if you've been keeping up and sharing about Trip Ups and Triumphs, the podcast, with your friends, so greatly appreciate it. Just a like and a follow makes all the difference, so I appreciate it. And you know how those algorithms work. Engagement. If not, it ain't be invisible at all. So I appreciate the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of you. No, I'm just kidding. The folks that are with us, that continue to stay with us and continue to send me messages that are just so kind and letting me know that you all are watching and crying and laughing along with me. That's exactly what I wanted. And so Trip Ups and Triumphs, again, if you are new to the show, is essentially what I said in the beginning of the promo, that we just share life's hiccups. We all have got them. We've all been through some things, and we're all making it through life and trying our best to be decent human beings, and that's all we could ever ask, right? So continuing on, at this point, you've probably heard a little bit about me being a survivor of a number of different sexual abuse advancements and hurdles that I've endured as a young adolescent, and the loss of my father in being in my life, being locked up for the majority of my childhood. And some of the stuff's maybe relatable, and some of you guys have been like, holy crap. But the crap's not over. We got more things to get through. But as you all know, I do like to have some fun before we get into the nitty gritty. So I thought it would be great for me to continue on sharing some of those biggest pet peeves with you all, because you guys really cracked me up with what you shared and which were some of your biggest pet peeves. So let's do this one. We will do the social media pet peeves, since we're all engaged in social media. If you're listening to this, it is a social media platform, believe it or not, even if you've given up Facebook, Instagram, and all of the above. Let's go with number 1. Saying just woke up like this, but then having a full face beat and perfect lighting. How many of you all know or have been guilty of it yourself? Just saying that this is basically how you look in the morning. We'll find out for sure by your significant other if you wake up to the other side and they still love you. That's saying a lot. So, but if you are getting the cameras ready and the lighting and the perfect angle and you've taken about 20 shots, you're guilty. This is all you. Number 2, this one is huge, and I actually like this one. But influencers whispering into mics. Oh, well, not this part. While eating pickles like it's ASMR gold. Yeah, I like the clicking. You know, a lot of people go to the... I don't know why I made that noise. But essentially, when people like tap or do that noise, can you hear that? When they're like showing off something like a product. If you can't see me, I'm tapping on my phone right now. But a lot of times people are showing off some things, and it's crazy. I watch a lot of cleaning videos. It keeps me sane, and then I stop to do what I'm doing, and just, instead of being productive, I just start cleaning the entire house all over. And then hashtags with more hashtags than captions. Hashtag stop, hashtag please, hashtag why. It's funny, I feel like a lot of people in my circle don't even know what a hashtag is. or the benefits, or it's funny. So yeah, stop doing that. It's 2025. Yeah. Thank you. We're going to switch gears as usual. This is the segment where we talk about the trip ups, the things that really were our hurdles and obstacles. And so we've been going through my personal story before we get into having guests sharing their wonderful stories. And if you yourself are interested in being a guest, please visit our website, tripupsandtriumphs.com. If you don't know how to spell that, I don't know what to tell you. Google it, ask ChatGPT or something. You'll figure it out. And look, my phone's already listening to me. It's popping up and saying, oh, no, use me. And now it's going to it's listening to everything I say and it's transcribing it. So that's pretty freaky. But anyhow, yes, that is an option for you. Love to hear about you. I love communicating with people, and you can be in the room in my studio with me, or you can choose to be at the comfort of your own home. No professional equipment required. You just need a camera or your phone that has a camera, and preferably a mic and some headphones, just for quality's sake. So yeah, please don't be shy. Please feel free to DM me as well if you can't find our site. And anyhow, I'm taking you back to do some storytelling. A lot of you have known this part of my life because I've been very open about it the last 15 plus years at this point, and it is something that has definitely shaped my life in many ways in regards to how I put up with connections or relationships, as well as how, what do I say, develop or don't develop relationships, friendships, things of that nature that require a little bit more because of fear of loss. And at this point in my life, I'm 14, 15 years old, and just already a broken child. I alluded to some things about anger issues previously, but never really got in depth with it. But I know that a lot of it stemmed from just a lot of pent up frustration from my past and not really getting the help that I needed and having the resources or even sharing with anyone about what I endured. But thankfully, I did get some form of help through my community, through my mentors. I was struggling with just a sense of meaning and purpose. And yeah, I realized I had a lot of anger issues and some very embarrassing moments in public settings where people would see me have meltdowns and anger strike, where I'm just punching away at thankfully he's still my friend today, but a really close person who had to deal with some of the ugly stages of my life and my family, and kind of seeing that dynamic, and not pretty, not a very fun memory of mine. Left some bruises and shed a lot of tears, and maybe even a vehicle or two probably had a couple of my footprints on it. But a lot of people wouldn't expect that from me because I'm just always so kind and sweet, is what people say, at least. But there was another side to me as well. At this stage, I told you that life at home was very stressful, very anxiety inducing, a lot of insecurity. At this point, I've seen a lot of arguments and fights and yelling and screaming and atmospheres that likely are not healthy for not just children, but anyone to be around. And you start to create this image of what life is really like, at least in your ozone. And you start to believe that either you are much different than other people and no one else deals with this, or this is normalcy and this is just how it is. I mean, even stemming back from grandparents and so on, everyone is so hot-headed, short, so anxious. So it creates a little bit of shakiness and maybe your own outbursts as well. But yeah, my mom and I's relationship really struggled at this point in my life. Obviously, people within my family knew about the abuse with the officer. And if you're, again, just catching up, please check out the previous videos so I don't have to rehash some things. But yeah, the arrests were made, and the sentencing, if you will, was also made at this point. And as a child, feeling the shame, guilt, and embarrassment really about the situation, and then not really talking about it or discussing or asking me how I necessarily felt. A lot of the adults around me were more so, I can't believe this happened, I can't believe this happened, and then telling other people, I can't believe this happened, I can't believe this happened. So from what I sort of know is my whole family pretty much knew what quote unquote happened, but not really, because they never got the facts from me. Maybe from court papers or something and relaying the message, but that's never, the full scope of how things play out. But yeah, I didn't know until much, much later from talking to some of my mom's friends. Um, my mom was very hurt about that and felt guilty and felt somewhat responsible for putting me in harm's way. And I don't know if she ever really forgave herself for that. And just having heard that, it was kind of a stab to the heart, especially because we never really had a open discussion about it. We just kind of separated further. She was dealing with her own issues on top of that, those feelings of guilt, and then I'm dealing with shame and embarrassment and cousins and aunts and whomever just kind of talking and maybe looking at me sideways or feeling like people are looking at me and talking about me, and I know they know about it, and knowing how some of my relatives are and sharing like, hey, this hurts me so badly. Well, it hurt me too. I'm the one who went through it. And yeah, it's just people kind of telling your story for you. Have you ever been in a position where people just talked about you or talked about things and you wish they didn't? You wish it would go away, or you just wish someone would ask you like, hey, are you okay about this? And wish that would have happened. So if you're dealing with something today, come to somebody, come to me. If you haven't shared that moment or thing just yet, I wish I would have gotten the help that I needed. Probably could have gotten through some feelings a little bit better and sooner. So that's that point. But pretty much going through some more transition in my house. We were moving again at this point. I don't know how many homes we had lived in, moving from house to house. And I believe at this point, I wasn't as privy to some of the deep things that my mom was into and suffering from. And again, my mom had me when she was 14 at this point, I'm 14, 15 years old. So she's maybe, 27, 28, 29 during this era. And I really pulled away during this season just because I was, emotionally removed. I think I was bitter and angry about things, and just knowing that my mom was preoccupied with, dealing and being in the streets, handling business, obviously, still providing for the family. And doing everything necessary and anything necessary to make that happen. So continue to have other strange characters in the house on a regular basis. I become tired of taking care of my siblings and wanting to escape. Any opportunity that I could leave or hang out somewhere else, I was going to go. And my mom and I would argue a lot about my availability or my frustrations or her frustrations with the way things were. And I really started to disappear at this point and become numb to a lot of the situations. One of my biggest regrets is not being there more for my siblings during that time, because I was their big brother and I always want to be around. And I actually notice and see as time went on where I stopped being in family photos because I never wanted to be around. There was even short stints where we were living with other people, some childhood friends, and that's a whole nother story and other weeds, side sagas, if you will, that turned out to be very dysfunctional and traumatic as well. But made our way back to what I'll say is my favorite neighborhood, and I'm still here now, but the neighborhood that I really grew up in with my grandmother, who at this point moved to another state. So I think a lot of kind of like my mom's security definitely left at that point, because there was less of a support system, meaning taking care of kids and just having someone present, like everybody wants their mom no matter what. Dads too, but there's different dynamics with both parents typically. The mother tends to be the more nurturing person. So not having that, I think that was another effect too for my mom's lifestyle and her situation. My mom was murdered when I was 15 years old, 15 and a half, in my 10th grade school year, like the beginning. And that was quite the shakeup in my life. And a lot of you have probably seen some things online or clips, or you can find stuff still on online versions of newspapers about the incident, and they described it in the best way possible. But news were still very different. This was still very extreme, especially with a female single mother being murdered, putting a hit out essentially to end one's life. And yeah, it was a very traumatizing experience that, again, I became very numb to and didn't really understand the full impact that that had. And the events leading up to it, I really couldn't tell you. To me, it was kind of blindsided. Uh, During, again, the last 3 years or so, my mentor had warned me about potential incidences if there was ever a case of emergency, how I would respond to that because of the household makeup with so many strangers and people coming in and dealings happening in the house rather than in the street, or people were coming into the home and there was a lot of people just around. And again, it seemed normal. It was normal in my household, but, it was me, my 3 siblings, it was my mom, her boyfriend's sister, her baby, and even at one point, the boyfriend's sister's boyfriend was also living there as well. Strange things that I actually interviewed quite a few people for another passion project that I'm still working on after a few years. I'm actually talking to some videographers that could take on that mantle, if you will, so that I can focus on other matters and they can do it justice much better than I can. But if you haven't seen that promo video about this period, this story, you can find that on my socials as well. But I had interviewed people during the COVID era, I believe, and just wanting to find out the truth and the realness of what had happened with that situation. Like, why was my mom murdered? And unfortunately, I think whenever you're dealing with gang related issues or a drug related, you don't get the full scope, the full details, because people don't want to incriminate themselves or be held responsible, or, snitches get stitches mentality or whatever it may be. And then people have personal vendettas against each other. So I couldn't really tell you the full thing, but what I do know is that my mom's not here today, and they felt it enough to take her life and change mine and my family's forever. Yeah, it's a cruel world, and I get mixed stories, but again, leading up to the events, there was some weirdness going on. I heard that my mom's tires got slashed. Talking to my siblings about that, I put some fear into them, and we were actually supposed to move again around that time, a couple blocks down, I guess, just to move headquarters, if you will, and to privatize our living space. But didn't get to the point where that happened. And there was other incidences too, where some folks that I interviewed either deny or don't recall, but someone was trying to enter into our side window of our house, and there was like a hammer thrown at somebody that was sleeping on the couch, and just all kinds of crazy, weird things that were scary. People coming to the door asking where my mom was. And, I can just envision a sense where there was like a lot of fear and anxiety to kind of avoid the impending ultimatum or finished job hit. And yeah, I believe, talking to my siblings some, that they either knew about those incidences or recall. And, there was even some fear with that and distress. I think my mom maybe knew it was coming, and that's why they couldn't catch her except for when she was asleep. They had to come into our house in the middle hours of the very early morning just to execute her and to finish the job because they couldn't catch her. They were trying to hunt her down, and thankfully no one else was harmed, mainly like us, by the grace of God, we are still here. And yeah, she had made a call actually to my mentor at the time, a week or two leading up, to just say like, hey, please pray for me. Going through something right now. I can't explain, I can't tell you, but just sounding distressed. And again, around this time, I'm 15 years old. I was wanting to have my own life. And I don't really know the last time I would have a decent conversation with my mom. I know I would write her letters or notes and just letting her know that I loved her and what my plans were and things like that. But I think that night before she was killed, that I was just going to like fast food restaurant or something and gave her a hug and a kiss. And never did I think that that would be the last time that I would see her. And I recall the following morning, maybe like 5 a.m. The sun's not out yet, and I'm getting a faint knock on my bedroom door, and this was, September 10th, 2007. At this point, I think we were still using window air units, and so like the noise of that unit in my bedroom was loud enough for me to not even hear the little bit of commotion that was taking place on the first floor. And the woman sleeping on the couch, which was again my mom's boyfriend's sister, we hear differing stories that she let the people into the house, or that the guys climbed through the window of an air unit. Please, recommendation, if you do have window units, make sure that they're secured and that people can't take them out to make an easy entry into your home. But that window unit was taken out, and that one individual had climbed through, turned the knob or the lock on the knob for the front door entry, and let the other 2 or 3 other individuals into the home. Woke up the woman, was on the couch, and had a gun to her face and asked who was in the house. So again, differing stories. Some say that she got up, went to the door, let them in, or was forced to let them in. But essentially, either way, she explained who was in the house, her own words as well, that we the kids were upstairs, and that her brother and my mom were downstairs, and proceeded to be shaken up. And supposedly, she was threatened with death as well. And 1 or 2 gentlemen came down the steps to the basement where my mom's bedroom had been, and her and her boyfriend lie asleep, sort of facing each other, and shot one time in the head. And they went back upstairs, and they ran out the door, and that's all she wrote. And many years later, like I said, when I was doing these interviews, I'd really heard more of the story, and kind of like what I experienced and what others in the house were experiencing at the same time. I know from my perspective, the boyfriend had come upstairs very shaken. He had apparently had heard the bang of the gun and turned on the light, and saw my mom, lying there, and him shaking her, her trying to see if she would come to. And obviously with the injury, that was not feasible. They, assumed that my mom died in her sleep, defenseless, with no protection, no viable means of survival at that point. But shaken up, he came upstairs. I don't know what the interaction was between him and his sister, but I know that he came upstairs to the second floor, faintly knocking on my door. Again, air conditioner on, not really knowing, and kind of hearing my name. My siblings in the rooms down the hall probably kind of hearing that, and I'm kind of like, what do you want? It's early, it's not time to get up. And him saying something along the lines of your mom's been shot. And immediately I jumped out of bed and said, what? Did you call the police? The door opened, and his hand is trembling, shaking. He can barely get any words out, and he had already called 911. And I grabbed the phone from him and, quickly told the dispatcher, our address and what I knew. And they were sending people on their way. And I just went downstairs to the first floor, saw the sister, the woman on the couch, kind of like a glazed look over her eyes, just kind of in shock, but slow to react. And the brother was, my mom's boyfriend, was very visibly shaken up. So 2 very different responses. I cannot say one way or another whether they were meaningful or not. It's not really up for me to say or debate. I know my family has their thoughts and opinions, and it's all we can really have, and hope that justice is served most effectively. We know that doesn't always happen, but who am I to assume anything? I don't want to incriminate anybody, but I can't say or doubt that I definitely have had my own personal feelings that I'll get to shortly. But yeah, I remember calling, some people around me, my mentor, my grandmother, or my mom's parents, my grandfather, my brother's father, just letting everyone know, this is an emergency, something's not right. And, their reactions over the phone. How can you tell someone, a mom that her daughter is in trouble. Her daughter is in danger and it's not looking good. And I don't know if at that point that, anyone knew, but it did not click in my mind. And, that my mom was deceased at this point. And what's crazy is I want to know from what point for my mom being shot and killed did it take for someone to call the emergency hotline and how long it took for responders to get there. Because to me, it was seconds. But the way it's described by those that were there in the house, it seemed like there was a whole time for me to do another episode in the lapse of what the heck? What's going on here? But apparently the sister had gone downstairs trying to shake my mom and just like wake her up a little bit to kind of see if she would, come to. And she's just describing, like the blood and just what she was seeing, what she was describing in her mind. My mom was still there, but I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but I imagine that's just the stages of life failure, death. Can't imagine my mom surviving that. In my mind, when I heard that she had been shot, I actually sat on the steps and all I could do was just pray and just like kind of like shaking up. I'm like, okay. Unfortunately, that little Nathan was so used to taking care of everyone around him that immediately my mind's like, oh my gosh, my mom's going to be in a wheelchair and I'm going to have to take care of her for the rest of her life. So innocent, right? But I was willing and I was like, okay, I had already put it in my mind, like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to have to take care of her and everybody else is going to have to get out of this house. And ultimately that's not what happened. Police had arrived and the ambulance went downstairs. And this is where some people will find my verbiage to be kind of questionable because I just recall, I don't even know who I was on the phone with at this point because I'm just still like calling different, people to explain what I knew and what happened and that, police were already there. And I heard a gentleman come back and in my mind, it's just something along the lines of like, we tried to see if there's, life in her and they just shook their head and said, she's dead. She's dead. Me just in total shock. And like, you're holding your breath and then you kind of just like, collapse at that point. And I don't even know. I couldn't tell you. I can't remember the exact parts. If I'm telling someone on the phone that, my mom is now dead. I know that my sister at the time was maybe like, 2 or 3. And she was kind of like waking up probably because of the commotion. And yeah, I sent her upstairs with a bottle to go back to bed. And I won't share my brother's side of things. I think one of my brothers has an amazing story on what transpired that morning. And to me, I say it's miraculous. There's definitely a protection over us that morning. And thankfully, we're all safe today. But we'll save that for another day. That'll keep you on your toes, right? But it's a really good story. But I remember running out to my buddy, and he had just arrived and see like the sun slowly going up. And I said, she's dead. And I just gave him the biggest hug and looked at the sky and then cried and said, why? And I broke down. I lost it. That's when it finally hit me that my mom was gone. And no matter how you look at it, my family 100% is dysfunctional. However, nothing would have prepared me for that day. Nothing would have prepared my family because we were forever changed after that point. We were all that we had. We were all that we knew, regardless of the ups and downs. I think every family endures a little bit of that. And my mom obviously was dealing with her own pain and suffering, and ultimately the outcomes of that and the travesty that would take place led to her unfortunate demise. But I look at it as she was a hurting soul, a hurting person, and it's kind of like the chain effect or the residual damage. But yeah, me and my family, we were pretty beat up after that. And my role, the only role that I knew up until that point in life, had just been taken away as well, on top of me losing the bread and butter of the family that held us together because we never thought that something like that would happen. We mentioned potential dangers and things and, stuff that you see on investigation discovery in movies, but you never thought that you would be a statistic or someone that endured something like this. And yeah, in a way, I was never the caretaker of my siblings ever again after that. My life was abruptly shaken. So in sharing that era of my life, have so many questions. I still have so many questions, right? How do you move on from something like that? If I had to do it over again, or if I needed to, essentially this is the segment of the triumph, the turning point. Yeah, I should have been in counseling. I should have been in therapy. I was getting my own spiritual support, which I greatly appreciate. But again, just like dealing with the dynamic of my family, like family is very dysfunctional. There was issues with custody and wanting to take ownership like months and months after, and this relative fighting with that relative and trying to take charge on who should be responsible for this child and that. And yeah, it wasn't possible for all of us to be together no matter what. And in a way, like, can't look back or can't say like, oh, how things would have been different. But we all, again, like I said, had residual damage, and it shaped us to who we are today in very different ways. And for me, I thought for a while that I was going to get my siblings back and I was going to raise them myself. I had this really commendable desire, even opened up business at the time, and it was very successful, and trying to secure, a way to help support that dream. And that was not in the cards. And I'm okay with it because I really got the opportunity to learn about myself, discover myself, and take care of myself and come into my own during the next years that would follow. Endured many other hiccups after that we don't have time to share today. But yeah, when anyone that's lost someone, no matter how, like, through tragedy like this, through a sickness or an illness, through prison or anything, there's a soft spot, there's a sore heart that time heals. You start to fill your life with other things to kind of fill that void. And sometimes it could be positive, sometimes it could be negative. And I've definitely done both. But how I got through it, yeah, it was just shedding light and awareness to what my feelings were. Tapping into that part of me that acknowledged, like, hey, I'm a little messed up in my way of thinking or in my ways because it's been impacted by this tragedy, this loss. And so I had a really hard time just wanting other people around or being close to me. And then, of course, developing new relationships. And when the topic of like moms came up, or like, hey, this and that and third, how do you explain? Like, yeah, I don't have my mom, she was killed. She was murdered. Because, when people ask like, oh, what happened? Like, oh, yeah. Well, one day, like, how do you go about that? And even when it came to like, intimate relationships, and, we're talking like partners or just friendships too, like having those deeper connections, not being able to necessarily like want to open up about some of those things, especially early on, right? Because you want to build relationships off healthy things, commonalities and not dysfunction. That's not the right way to go. But yeah, and how I would look at the world around me too, and how it's a little mean, it's a little dusty. Really, it took me to my early 20s, but also my late 20s too, just different stages of grief and healing. I encourage you to look all of those up. Let me actually look at the stages of grief right now for you all, especially for some of you that might be driving. I don't want you to look this up now. I'm going to look it up for you. So the common described stages of grief, they say there's 5. It's denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And so the denial happened very fast. Like, is this really it? You could already see in the environment on the steps where I told you, I was like, no. But even beyond that, like the denial phase can take place for a while because you're like, yeah, is that person going to come through the door? Or like, is this some sick joke? Anger, most definitely. I suffered from that, for a long time. And then bargaining. During this stage, individuals may try to negotiate or make deals to reverse the loss or prevent it from happening. So it's like, just kind of like, maybe it's like, that was when I was wanting to have my siblings together and kind of just making peace, and like, hey, let's pick up. It's like trying to pick up sand through your fingers and it just keeps falling out and falling out. It's just like, it doesn't work. And then there was like weeks, for sure, weeks and weeks, and even months later. I mean, kudos to the teachers that had the patience, because honestly, I was ready to, just like when I was a child, wanting to go to school literally the same day or like the day after that all these events happened. I was crazy because I just didn't want to believe it. I wanted things to be normal so bad. I didn't never wanted to be recognized as the kid that lost a mom or the kid that came from this and all the the trauma and the crap. And so it was just another way for me to cover up or hide. And obviously, I didn't go back to school right away. And I honestly cannot tell you what was going on between September and December. I know that December was a crapshoot because there was a lot of drama going on there. And yeah, I just remember sleeping. I would sleep in class, and classes were long, like 90 minutes back then. I would wake up and either drooling or just in shock. And actually remember one of my teachers, I think it was Hill House specifically. I remember being in her class and saying like class is over, and just the patience that these teachers had. I just thank all of them for it. Yeah, I mean, how do you deal with a student who's dealing with that? And thankfully, I survived the school year. I know I made some changes to focus on being more of an adult. I felt like that's just what I had to do. I had to grow up really fast. And then the last stage is acceptance. Acceptance does not necessarily mean happiness or an end to sadness, but rather a coming to terms with the reality of the loss, and it involves finding a way to live with the loss and continue moving forward. So, if you are grieving something right now, what stage of grief are you currently in? Or which one, if you're not currently experiencing grief, maybe you either know someone or have gone through the grieving period and sticks out the most to you. I'd very much look forward to hearing what you have to say. You can share in the comments below or chat me at a later time. Because we're winding down on this week's episode, I just wanted to leave you with that. I know that's kind of like a little bit darker, a little bit sadder than in previous episodes, more than likely, but I want you to kind of sit with that, because a lot of times we try to avoid feelings and emotions, and you just cannot do that. You cannot bury them to the point where you become numb. You can, but it may not be the best way. Maybe try another strategy, because you want to get past that. You want to get past that loss. You want to get past that struggle, because you are so much stronger than you give yourself credit for. So much stronger. Like if I got through it. I still ask myself, I don't know how. Like, I applaud that young man. I applaud that little Nathan. I'm like, how did he make it through that? Because, yeah, I didn't even realize like how devastating my life was until like I talk to people nowadays, and we open up about things and they're like, holy crap, like your life was crazy. And I'm like, it was nothing, but it was something, and so was yours. So I want to leave you with that. And again, Trip Ups and Triumphs is here to just remind you that you are awesome. You're going to make it through these comebacks, these failures, these setbacks in life. They too can turn into success. You can have your turnaround moment. Keep grinding through the challenges. Celebrate something small or big today, guys. It's all a part of your journey, and I am so excited to hear about your journey, what you got going on. And yeah, we keep it real here. And real crazy, real sad, real funny, real happy too. But again, tune in next time for the next episode of Trip Ups and Triumphs. Again, I am your host, Nathan Cabrera. If you could please give us a like, give us a follow, especially set your notifications on so when you are up and about doing your life, you can be notified when another episode is released. So until next time, next week, have a wonderful, happy, and blessed day.